Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, Bachelor in Social Work, BSW. Elective courses, BSWE 002 VOLUME1 Social Work Intervention with Individual and Groups. Unit 13 Contemporary Social Problems. Introduction. In this chapter we are discussing some of the common problems in India. The remaining problems will be dealt in the next chapter. Problems like HIV, AIDS, communalism, youth unrest, corruption and displacement have received a lot of attention in the recent times. One can say that these are problems related to that of developing societies like India. That is why they have to be given special attention to these problems. Some of the solutions to these problems are also discussed, especially the government response are discussed. HIV, AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, is a disease which is caused by a virus called human immunodeficiency virus or HIV. AIDS is the last stage of infection in the virus. It takes about 8 to 10 years between getting infected with HIV and developing AIDS. No vaccine has been invented till today as a cure for AIDS or for protecting people from HIV. Magnitude. At the end of 2001, WHO and UNAIDS estimated that 40 million people around the world were living with HIV. It was estimated that there were 5 million new HIV infections and 3 million deaths due to AIDS. Among the new infections, 800,000 occurred among children under 15 years and more than 2 million were among women. Since the first clinical evidence of AIDS reported in June 1981, some 25 million people have died of AIDS, including 3.6 million children. The Indian Council of Medical Research, ICMR, initiated surveillance for HIV infection in India in late 1985. Anti-HIV antibodies were first detected among sex workers in Chennai, South India in 1986. The National AIDS Control Organization, NACO, initiated unlinked anonymous sentinel surveillance in 55 sites across the country in 1994 to monitor the trends of the epidemic. By the end of 2001, on the basis of nationwide sentinel surveillance, NACO estimated that approximately 3.97 million persons in India were infected with HIV/AIDS. These estimations of 2001 indicated that at least 0.8% adults in the age group of 15 to 49 years were infected. High-risk groups and routes of transmitting the virus. HIV spreads mainly through 4 routes. 1. Sex with an infected partner, heterosexual as well as homosexual. 2. Transfusion of blood and blood products infected with HIV. 3. Injecting drugs with infected syringes or needles. And 4. Transmission from infected mother to her unborn child. In a study in Pune, it was found that 80% HIV cases were related to sexual promiscuity, 5% to blood transfusion and 4% to injecting drug with infected syringes. Thus, the most important sources of transmission of virus are 1. Prostitutes. According to one estimate, the level of HIV infection escalated from 1% to 30% among prostitutes in Mumbai in just 3 years from 1989 to 1991. 2. Homosexuality. Though homosexuality is still an offense under the Indian Penal Code, the long-held taboos about homosexuality are now beginning to break. Therefore, the risk of HIV infection through homosexuality is increasing. 3. Drug addicts. Those who take drugs by injection carry the possibility of spreading the HIV infection through infected needles. 4. Blood donors. There are some professional blood donors whose blood sometimes contains the HIV. When their blood is transfused to patients without proper testing, the HIV is transmitted. Laboratories may similarly transmit the HIV when they supply blood without scientific testing. 5. Pregnant women. Pregnant women who are HIV positive transmit the virus to their newborn children. 6. Blades. Use of blade for shaving, particularly the one used by the barbers, is also a risk factor in spreading the HIV. Implications. AIDS is not just a health problem, it is a problem with important social, cultural and economic implications. Caring for the infected, the government recognized the serious impact of HIV, AIDS and has responded to the epidemic. The Government of India is currently implementing the second phase of the National AIDS Control Program, NACP2. 1999 to 2004. NACP2 was developed through a process of consultation and deliberation between Government of India, state governments, people living with HIV, AIDS, UNAIDS and bilateral partners, community members, industry and labor organizations and the civil society. It has 5 key components. I. Targeted interventions for communities at highest risk. E. Prevention of HIV transmission among the general population. E. Provision of low-cost care and support. IV. Strengthening institutional capacities. And V. Intersectoral collaboration. The key objectives of NACP2 are to 1. Reduce the spread of HIV infection in India, and 2. Strengthen India's capacity to respond to the HIV/AIDS epidemic on a long-term basis, in collaboration with multiple sectors, NGOs including other civil society actors. Role of voluntary organizations. The voluntary organizations can provide information, services and other social support systems to people in danger of contracting the disease. Before contracting the infection, knowledge about the spread of HIV infection can be imparted by community-based social workers. The voluntary organizations can make effort towards this support system. Besides helping the patients, the voluntary organizations can also help the HIV/AIDS affected or infected children, families and other dependents from becoming victims of isolation and discrimination. Finding funds to fight AIDS is a serious problem in our country because the potential costs are staggering. Environmental degradation. Environmental degradation can be broadly divided into two categories. 1. Extreme events and hazards. The events are caused either by natural processes or man-made, which bring immediate changes in the environment and inflict damage and loss to the environment in which we live. It is further divided into I. Natural hazards, caused by natural factors. A. Territorial, occurs on the land surface, caused by endogenic factors, e.g. volcanic eruption, earthquake, submergence, etc. B. Atmospheric, cyclones, atmospheric lightning. C. Cumulative atmospheric, they are caused due to the accumulation of effects of certain atmospheric phenomena for several years in continuation. A. G. Floods, drought. 2. Man-induced hazard. A. Physical hazards, landslides, forest fires. B. Chemical hazards, release of toxic gases, nuclear explosions. C. Biological, increase or decrease in the population of a species, explosion of human population. 3. Biological hazards not caused by man, e.g. locust swarms, epidemics. Pollution, deterioration of environmental quality beyond a critical limit caused by human activities. A. Land pollution, soil erosion, desertification, and salination. B. Water pollution, pollution of seawater, pollution of rivers, and pollution of groundwater. C. Air pollution, depletion of ozone layer, concentration of greenhouse gases, suspended particles. Some of the important factors that cause environmental degradation are 1. Deforestation, accelerates soil erosion, increases sediments in the rivers, siltation of reservoir, increase in the frequency of drought and floods etc. Changes in the pattern and distribution of precipitation. Intensification of greenhouse effects, increase in destructive forces of atmosphere storms etc. 2. Agricultural development, increase in agricultural land and large-scale deforestation. The need for increase in the productivity of agricultural land and thus intensive cultivation through application of insecticides, pesticide, fertilizer, irrigation etc. has led to problems like eutrophication, contamination of soils, salination, usurization of soils, pollution and depletion of groundwater etc. 3. Population growth, it leads to industrial expansion, agricultural development and urban growth. Increased demands lead to rapid exploitation of natural resources, which causes lowering of environmental quality and ecological imbalance. 4. Industrial development, though it has given rise to economic prosperity, it resulted in environmental degradation through undesirable outcomes such as industrial wastes, polluted water, toxic gases, ashes, scarification of land through mining etc. 5. Increased urbanization. Increased urbanization means phenomenal increase in the concentration of human population in limited space. It results in increasing buildings, roads and streets, sewage and storm drains, factories and industrial wastes, urban waste etc., which causes environmental degradation. 6. Modern technology. Modern technologies are more destructive than the earlier ones. They aim at accelerated rate of exploitation of natural resources and produce outputs to raise the material standards of human beings. However, such processes run counter to ecological pattern of productive growth. For example, application of fertilizer, pesticide and insecticides in agriculture. Use of nuclear technology, burning of fossil fuels etc. Conservation measures. 1. The most important factor, which causes environmental degradation, is growth of population. So, one of the important steps to check environmental degradation would be to check the population growth. 2. Development of pollution-free technologies. 3. Reduction in the exploitation of natural resources. 4. Large-scale effort to replenish the depleted forests through afforestation and reforestation. 5. To limit the use of chemical fertilizer, pesticide and insecticides and to increase the use of organic fertilizer. 6. To limit the use of those items, like refrigerators, air conditioners etc., which release ozone-depleting gases like chlorofluorocarbons, CFC. 7. To limit the use of hydrocarbons to reduce the release of greenhouse gases like Colorado 2. 8. To heal degraded land caused by erosion. 9. To stop the use of nuclear weapons. 10. To educate people about environment. The issue can be tackled by creating greater awareness about the ecological diversity and stability. There is also a need to realize the need for awareness about cooperation at international levels as these problems transcend the national boundaries and the current international efforts, Montreal Protocol, Kyoto Protocol etc., dealing with climate change, the concept of sustainable development etc. Communalism. Concept of communalism. Communalism is an ideology which states that society is divided into religious communities whose interests differ and are, at times, even opposed to each other. The antagonism practiced by the people of one community against the people of other community and religion can be termed as communalism. This antagonism goes to the extent of falsely accusing, harming and deliberately insulting a particular community and may extend to looting, burning down the homes and shops of the helpless and the weak, dishonoring women, and even homicide. The genesis and growth of communalism in India. It is widely realized that communalism in India was born, nurtured and promoted by the British imperialism as a deliberate design to sow dissensions. It served the purpose of the colonial administration to divide and rule. Thus, the prevailing religious differences were first used to project the social and cultural variations and then to promote political divisions by treating Indians not as Indians but as members of different religious communities. Growth of communalism. Causes. Jawaharlal Nehru once described communalism as the Indian version of fascism. He said, while all communalism is bad, we must remember that minority communalism is born out of fear, while majority communalism takes the form of political reaction to assert dominance. But he added, there could be no compromise on the issue of communalism, Hindu communalism or Muslim communalism, as it is a challenge to Indian nationhood and Indian nationalism. The main forces which have encouraged the growth of communalism in contemporary India are 1. Economic backwardness of Muslims. 2. Growth of communal parties and organizations. 3. Electoral compulsions of political parties. 4. Communal media, literature and textbooks. 5. Separatism and isolation among Muslims. Anatomy of communal riots. A probe into the major communal riots in the country during the last 5 decades reveals that communal riots are more politically motivated than fueled by religion. Besides political interests, economic interests also play a vital role in fomenting communal clashes. The probability of recurrence of communal riots in a town where communal riots have already taken place once or twice is stronger than in a town when such riots have never occurred. Most communal riots take place on the occasion of religious festivals. The use of deadly weapons in the riots is on the ascendancy. Prescriptive measures to deal with communalism. Measures to meet the challenge of communalism and communal violence can be of two types: long-term and short-term. The long-term measures are 1. In initiating the process of communalizing the people at all levels, say, by bringing home to them that communal assumptions are false, by explaining to them the socio-economic and political roots of communalism. 2. Communalization of the state and of the political elite has to be checked because it leads to inaction against communal violence and covert or overt political and ideological support to communalism by the state apparatus. 3. The communalization of civil society also needs to be checked because it leads to riots that are more communal. People with communal ideas and ideologies pressurize the government to act in a manner which is always against the principles of secularism. 4. The role of education, particularly emphasizing on value-oriented education both in schools and colleges, is important in preventing communal feelings. 5. The media can also prove to be significant in preventing communal feelings. Communal press can be banned and legal action can be taken against communal writers. Some immediate measures are imperative for containing communalism and communal riots. 1. Peace committees can be set up in which individuals belonging to different religious communities can work together to spread goodwill and fellow feelings and remove feelings of fear and hatred in the riot-affected areas. 2. The state has to plan and use new strategies in dealing with communal violence. Whenever strong and secular administrators have used or threatened the use of strong steps, riots either did not occur or were of short duration. 3. The role of media is immensely highlighted during the course of communal violence. The fear and hatred can be checked if the press, radio and TV report the events in a way conducive to soothing the frayed nerves of people instead of inflaming the temper further. 4. Lastly, the government in power has to treat the extremist communal outfits as its immediate targets and cripple their capacity to disrupt law and order. the secessionists in Kashmir, the militants in Punjab, the IGNOU band in Kerala and other extremist organizations of Hindu, Muslim and Sikh communalism have to be dealt with by the state through its law and order machinery. The small insecure communities always look to government or move towards communal parties for protection. The Pandits in Kashmir, the innocent victims of communal riots in Mumbai, Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat and other states, and the sufferers of violence of extremists in Bihar, Assam, look towards the secular state of India for the security of life and property. Youth unrest may be defined as the manifestation of collective frustration of the youth in the society. It is manifested when the existing norms in the society are perceived by the youth as ineffective or harmful to the extent that they feel so disillusioned and disgusted about them and recognize the need for changing these norms. Characteristics of youth unrest. On the basis of the above definition, it may be said that youth unrest is characterized by I. Collective discontent, E. Dysfunctional conditions, E. Public concerns, and IV. The need for change in the existing norms. Youth agitations. Youth agitation is the behavior of the youth whose goal is social protest. Its aim is neither to injure a person nor cause destruction of public property. Various forms of youth agitations are demonstrations, slogan shouting, strikes, hunger strikes, roadblocks, ghiravs, and boycott of examinations. The preconditions of youth agitations are I. Structural strain, E. Identifying the source of strain, E. Precipitating factor in initiative action, and IV. Mobilization of force for action by a leader. The important functions of youth agitations are A. To create collective consciousness and group solidarity, B. To organize the youth to work for new programs and new plans, and C. To provide opportunities to young individuals to express their feelings and make some impact on the course of social change. Students' agitations form an important dimension of youth agitation. Students' agitations may be classified as I. Student-oriented agitations, and E. Society-oriented agitations. The former include agitations pertaining to problems at college, university level and at national level, while the latter refer to students' interest in state, country's politics and programs. Student-oriented agitations are generally discontinuous and problem-oriented rather than value-oriented. Process of growth of agitation due to youth unrest. Many youth agitations follow a life cycle, which comprises the following stages. I. The discontent stage, which is the stage of dissatisfaction and growing confusion with the existing conditions. E. The initiation stage, in which a leader emerges, the causes of discontent are identified, excitement increases and proposals for action are debated. E. The formalization stage, in which programs are developed, alliances are forged, and support is sought from outside actors. IV. The public support stage, in which youth trouble is transferred into public trouble. This not only creates awareness among public but also seeks public support on the concerned issue. The youth fail to get the public support where A. The claim is too vague, B. The issue is not powerful enough to gain attention, C. The issue is incorrectly focused, D. Ineffective strategies are adopted by the youth for pressing claims, and A. Opposition from other interest groups. V. Official action stage, in which the agencies in power realize the importance of the issue, officially acknowledge the discontent, and agree to adopt strategies to solve the issue. Causes of youth unrest and agitation. The UGC Committee of 1960 pointed out the following reasons for student agitations. 1. Economic causes, like demands for reducing fees, increasing scholarship. 2. Demands for changes in existing norms pertaining to admissions, examinations, and teaching. 3. Poor functioning of colleges, universities with non-purchase of chemicals and instruments for laboratories, or books and journals for libraries. 4. Conflicting relations between students and teachers, teachers being accused of frequently cutting classes and remaining non-committed to teaching. 5. Inadequate facilities in the campus, like inadequate hostel accommodation, poor food in hostels, lack of canteens and poor drinking water facilities. And 6. Leaders being instigated by politicians. Controlling youth agitations. The adult world has to accept the fact that youth problems cannot be solved for them but with them. Therefore, cooperation of students, youths needs to be sought by parents, teachers and administrators. Youth, students, parents, teachers and educational administrators, politicians and political parties should cooperate in understanding problems, grievances of the youth and in giving them logical guidelines. It is high time that the vast youth power, which hitherto has been neglected and ignored, is harnessed for development, achievement of social justice and national goals. Corruption. Corruption in simple terms may be described as an act of bribery. It has also been described as the use of public power for private gain in a way that constitutes a breach of law or a deviation from the norms of society. Corruption is present in the society in several forms. Of these, the major ones are bribery, money offered in cash or kind or gift as inducement to procure illegal or dishonest action in favor of the giver; nepotism, undue favor from holder of patronage to relatives; misappropriation, using others' money for one's own use; patronage, wrong support, encouragement given by patron and thus misusing the position; and favoritism, unduly preferring one to other. The Preparatory Committee for Alternative Economic Policies has done some research in the kickbacks. It estimated that the kickbacks shot up from 3,036 crore rupees in 1980-81 to an astounding 19,414 crore rupees in 1990-91, i.e. the amount involved increased by more than 6 times in 1 decade. The registered number of cases of corruption in India under the Prevention of Corruption Act, 1947 varied from 300 to 500 between 1981 and 1987. However, after the enforcement of 1988 Act, the number now varies between 1,800 and 2,000 per year. The number of corruption cases registered in 1988 were 1,295, in 1993 it was 1,895 and in 1994 it went up to 1,911. Of the total registered cases, 70 to 75% were charge-sheeted. About 104 new cases were already pending in courts. Out of 1,423 persons tried in 1994, only 13.9% were convicted. These figures give a picture of the situation of corruption in the country and how the situation is dealt with. Causes of corruption. A number of factors have been pointed out as causing corruption. A. The emergence of political elite who believe in interest-oriented rather than nation-oriented programs and policies. B. Recent scandals have been in areas where either purchase policies or prices are controlled by the government. C. Corruption is caused by scarcity of goods. D. Corruption is caused as well as increased because of the change in the value system and ethics of men who administer. A. Corruption can be traced to ineffective administration, lack of vigilance, enormous powers to the bureaucracy, lack of accountability, defective information system, etc. These conditions give scope to officials not only to become corrupt but remains unaffected even after following corrupt practices. Impact of corruption. It is important to recognize that corruption has affected our society in several ways. 1. It has retarded economic development of the country. 2. It has created violence and lawlessness in the society since the corrupt have the money power to influence the executor of law to serve him. 3. It has resulted in the deterioration of morals and destroyed the individual character. 4. It has increased inefficiency, nepotism, and lethargy and has created indiscipline in all fields of administration. 5. It has increased black money in the country. 6. It has led to adulteration of eatables, spurious drugs and shortage of many consumer items. The legislation, the Prevention of Corruption Act, came into force in September 1988. It consolidated the provisions of the Prevention of Corruption Act, 1947, some sections of the Indian Penal Code, the Criminal Procedure Code, and the Criminal Law Act, 1952. The sole idea was to bring all relevant provisions under a single act. Further, the 1988 Act enlarged the scope of the term public servant and included a large number of employees within its ambit. Measures taken to contain corruption. The Government of India appointed a Committee on Prevention of Corruption in 1960 under the chairmanship of K. Santhanam. The recommendations covered various aspects of corruption. It was on the basis of the recommendations of this committee that the Central Vigilance Commission was set up in 1964 for looking into the cases of corruption against the central government and other employees. The central government has set up the following 4 departments as anti-corruption measures: I. Administrative Vigilance Division, AVD, in the Department of Personnel and Training; E. Central Bureau of Investigation, CBI; E. Domestic Vigilance Units in the Ministries, Departments, Public Undertakings, Nationalized Banks; and IV. Central Vigilance Commission. Yet other effective method of containing corruption could be to introduce a method which will enable political parties to secure electoral funds in a bona fide manner, or the central government to finance elections through an election fund. This system is being followed in Germany, Norway and Sweden and in some advanced countries of Europe. Migration and displacement. According to the Demographic Dictionary, migration is a form of geographical mobility or spatial mobility between one geographical unit and another, generally involving a change in residence from the place of origin or place of departure to the place of destination or place of arrival. Such migration is called permanent migration, and should be distinguished from other forms of movement, which do not involve a permanent change of residence. Forms of migration. Internal migration refers to migration from one place to another within a country, while external migration or international migration refers to migration from one country to another. In India, the migrants are classified into 4 streams, namely, A. Rural to rural, B. Rural to urban, C. Urban to urban, and D. Urban to rural. Another typology based on time classifies migration into long-range migration and short or seasonal migration. Apart from these two important types, migration could be voluntary or involuntary or forced, brain drain, migration of young skilled persons, and migration of refugees and displaced persons. Characteristics. An important characteristic is the age selectivity of the migrants. Most migration studies have found that rural-urban migrants are predominantly young adults and relatively better educated than those who remain at their place of origin. Another important characteristic is that the migrants have a tendency to move to those places where they have contacts and where the previous migrants serve as link for the new migrants. In some cases, the migrants not only tend to have the same destination but also tend to have the same occupation. For example, research reveals that in certain hotels in Jaipur almost all the workers belong to one particular sub-region of Kumaon. The agricultural laborers in Punjab and Haryana are mainly from eastern Uttar Pradesh. Reasons for migration. The important factors which cause migration may broadly be classified into 4 categories: economic factors, demographic factors, socio-cultural factors, and political factors. Economic. The major reason for voluntary migration is economic. In most of the developing countries, low agricultural income, agricultural unemployment and underemployment are the major factors pushing the migrants towards areas with greater job opportunities. Even the pressure of population resulting in a high man-land ratio is widely recognized as one of the important causes of poverty and rural-urban migration. The most important economic factors that motivate migration may be termed as push factors and pull factors. A. Push factors. An ILO study reveals that the main push factor causing the worker to leave agriculture is the lower levels of income. The non-availability of alternative sources of income in the rural area is also another factor for migration. Even subdivision of land holdings leads to migration. B. Pull factors. These refer to those factors which attract the migrants to an area, such as opportunities for better employment, higher wages, better working conditions and better amenities of life, etc. In recent years, the high rate of movement of people from India as well as from other developing countries to the USA, Canada and now to the Middle East is due to the better employment opportunities and possibility of attaining higher standards of living. Pushback factors. In India, another important factor which plays a crucial role on migration is pushback factor. In India, according to Ashish Bose, the urban labor force is sizable and the urban unemployment rates are high. There also exist pools of underemployed persons. All these factors act in combination as deterrents to the fresh flow of migration from the rural to urban areas. He calls this as a pushback factor. Socio-cultural and political factors. In addition to these push and pull factors, social and cultural factors also play an important role in migration. Improved communication facilities, such as transportation, impact of radio and television, cinema, urban-oriented education and resultant change in attitudes and values promote migration. Sometimes family conflicts also cause migration. In fact, even political factors also may encourage or discourage migration. For instance, in our country, the adoption of jobs for sons of the soil policy by the state government will certainly affect migration from other states. Consequences of migration. The consequences of migration are diverse. They are: 1. Economic. Migration from a region characterized by labor surplus helps to increase the average productivity of labor in that region, as this encourages labor-saving devices and/or greater work participation by the remaining family workers. On the other hand, there is a view that migration negatively affects the emigration region, i.e., the region from where people move out, and favors the immigrating region, i.e., the region to where people go. Similarly, it was argued that migration would widen the development disparity between the regions, in view of the drain of the resourceful persons from the relatively underdeveloped region to the more developed region. However, the labor-sending regions may gain economically by the money brought in by the emigrants. 2. Demographic. Migration has a direct impact on age, sex and occupational composition of the sending and receiving regions. Migration of the unmarried males of young working age results in imbalances in sex ratio. This tends to reduce the birth rate in the rural areas. 3. Social and psychological. Urban life usually brings about certain social changes in the migrants. Those migrants who return occasionally or remain in direct contact with the households of their origin are also likely to transmit some new ideas back to the areas of origin. On the other hand, migration, which results in the absence of the adult males for long periods, may cause dislocation of the family. Under such circumstances, Women and children often have to take over more and different types of work and other more important roles in household decision making. Studies have revealed very disturbing effects of the male migration from Kerala. Neurosis, hysteria and depression are said to be on the increase among the emigrant workers' wives in Kerala. Conclusion: in this chapter we learned about many social problems. Broadly, we saw that social problems are caused due to social, cultural, economic, political, legal and ecological factors. We also saw that not just government but other civil society institutions are also playing an important part in containing these problems. Thank you.